Today we're hosting this program from Cappuccinos. This is Cappuccino's Well.
Sobel.
All right, we thank the owner for allowing us to take up space. Much appreciated. So today's topic is, what is architecture? Dieter, let's hear your take on that.
Okay, I don't know, some will call it a clinical way of looking what architecture is. But I would agree with the great architectural author D.K. Chin. As an art, architecture is more than satisfying the purely functional requirement of a building program. Fundamentally, the physical manifestation of architecture accommodating human actions. However, the arrangements and the ordering of forms and spaces also determine how architecture might promote endeavors, indecent responses, and communicate meaning. And this is out of his book, Form, Space, and Order. So, putting it plainly, architecture is not just for fulfilling the function of a building that it's used for in the practising. It is also for fulfilling the function of the mind, creating a space that the mind interacts with willingly or unwillingly.
True.
That's how I see it.
True. And I agree with that last part,
Yeah.
I agree with that last part because it's something that I remember I was talking to a client and I was telling them you can't just assume, because you'll think to yourself that you are going to use a space like this, but in clear fact, you're not going to enjoy actually moving from this space to another. Then there's only at that point they realize that I actually know what I'm doing. So then I was like, oh, so this is what this field is about. This field is about understanding space to such a level, right? And understanding the energy that comes with it, the emotions that it develops, how the mind feels within it. So literally that explanation, it's something that I like the most. I love it. I love it.
Well, I agree with Vitruvius when he's speaking about the three elements of architecture, right? This is beauty, this is utility, and this is durability, right? So we're living in 2023 in a finite Earth. The globe is about 510 million square kilometers, give or take. A third of that is land. Now, on that land, we have to be dealing with food, clothing, shelter, and the support systems that deal with that, because we have made ourselves the top of the pyramid, right? So, which means we have finite material uses to create space. Horizontally, we have to be careful what we do. Vertically, we have a lot of space, but materialistically, we have finite resources, right? With the maths behind that, you have to balance what people call beautiful, what the utility of a structure, and the durability from temporary as intense through to endless life cycle, right? Bunkers, right? And then from there, you also have to factor in recyclability, right? So at the end of the day, in 2023, we're looking at doing way more with way less to achieve a more elegant and refined design, right? And that's where architects come in.
Yeah. And that's a new field, eh? It's a new spectrum, because from saying you're just addressing an issue of giving shelter, right? Because that's the primitive understanding that we are doing this to shelter something. Now we have moved to a point where we're doing this to facilitate or to give a facility a space to do something. Now we're moving to a point where we're like, okay, we have the spaces, now we need to actually have spaces that respond in a safer or better or sustainable way. So now it's literally just, it's not far from providing shelter. That's the base route. It's still the base route, but it's now a thing of, yes, we're providing shelter, but the materials, how can we use something more sustainable, make it look nice at the same time? Because I'd rather stay in a shack if I'm going to be staying in something that's going to catch fire because, you use some crazy material that doesn't work. I don't know.
Is it a shack or is it a tiny house?
Well, the YouTube channel, a very good question. The YouTube channel Think Big actually made a very good point. So they looked at developments in the UK where pieces of land are being stripped and developed into housing, and a lot of people are protesting it. And something they showed was that as soon as it is aesthetically beautiful structures, not just a house with a roof over their head, people don't protest it. They rather protest ugly ugly buildings and keep the open piece of land than protest new buildings that replace a piece of land. So they show as soon as you beautify something for the why, it's pleasant to look at, it's pleasant to experience, people enjoy it more. Where you're just roofing somebody, people don't want to live next to that.
But I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, we've had our era of just providing an envelope for a volume, right? Now we need to be thinking beyond that. I mean, we have the sick building syndrome we're dealing with. We have toxic buildings, wherein even the chemicals in the walls and the furniture in the fixtures are toxic to releasing volatile organic compounds into the air. We've moved on from that. Now we need to actually be thinking the value, psychological value of the volume we're creating, along with that envelope which supports that system. I mean, I actually have a bit of an issue with really large houses with very few people in them. I'm looking at my ancestors who walked from the Congo Delta in the 1400s and how light they were packing, and seeing how walking through the whole atmosphere, light being symbiotic in a relationship with the environment versus the 21st century lifestyle which promotes excessive living with less productivity and value. And now you have to gauge the psychological benefit of that kind of system, because if you're complaining about the pollution in the air, but the materials that are being generated through the industrial systems that produce what you have, you're not gauging that, then one has to think about, you can't be complaining if you're part of the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say for a family unit to thrive? What would you say is the amount of space, or would you, as an architect?
Well, it would considerations like live, work, play, right? I mean, different strokes for different folks. If I'm a photographer living in my own house while having an art studio and a culinary kitchen, if that is how I'm making my living, versus a person who is practicing medicine and their primary office is in a hospital somewhere, you understand that our needs are different, right? Which means my occupation of space would be designed bespoke to what I need, right?
Yeah.
But now you are having this system where, because of the real estate markets, we always have to consider the next person who might be needing to occupy that space. However, now we also need to question whether that is even the right thing to do in the markets that we are working in. Or do we go right back to different strokes for different folks?
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you say you have an issue with large houses for few people, what size would you start saying the house is getting too large for that few occupants of it?
When you don't see a room for a majority of the year, chances are you don't need that room.
Who was the guy? There was this, I think it was 50 Cent, the rapper. He said he had a mansion. He has a big mansion. Yeah, and then he sold it because every time when he stood on the hallway, it went all the way down, right? And he would look down and he would be like, who's there? But it's his house and he's alone. And he sold it because he was like, I can't, because he doesn't know what's at the end of the... He knows it's his house. He knows, but it's like, this is too much.
So I've worked on projects where it is a 2,300 square house, but every room is used. They have cinemas, they have man cave, they have 3 lounges. Spaces are all used, but I would agree that is a bit too much for a family unit. But where do we draw a line? 1,000, 500? For me, I think anything above 150 square on average is getting to a little bit much. My house is 120 squares. It feels too big for me. Although I have a daughter, and yeah, and I'm probably going to need an office space as well, but it feels a bit too much. So for me, I would say more than 150 square meters is starting to fall into more of a luxury territory.
Well, the thing is, I don't have anything against luxury, right? I actually encourage luxury. But there is a level where it's not just luxury for the sake of comfort. It's luxury for the sake of flamboyance and showing off. And it's not really efficient in terms of the way one might be structuring their systems. Unless you are actually in the industry that promotes that. You know, if you're a media personality and your job is to project an excessive life, then by all means, that's you, you know.
But who are they projecting it to promote them to do it too?
Yeah. Well, there's always a market.
Yeah. So meaning the other ones are also going to want the same thing.
Well, here's the thing about creating desire. At what point is the desire that you're creating a positive versus a negative?
But is it a positive saying that it's fine to have a, let's say, a 2,000 square house when I know 95% of people in Africa's household is 20 squares or smaller?
Look, there's a level of consciousness that one would have to be able to rise up to in order to understand what your actual impact on the planet is and the kind of control you have over that, right? I mean, we've had companies in history which have had the power to change the global warming situation for a long time, and because of these deliberate decisions decided not to do that, right? And that is upon them. Those of us who are still in that knowledge supporting those kinds of systems, we cannot then complain because we're the ones who are, by virtue of our money, we are saying that we are supporting that kind of venture, right?
Yeah, also in our field, you know, one thing that I have to say I've learned, like very harshly, is the fact that if I can't feel comfortable on what I'm eating in my profession, like as in what do I eat at home and what can I afford to even eat, right? Then I start looking at my salary, then I start moving towards where I would like to actually get paid more in a particular way. Meaning fees go up, then you have particular people that have particular needs and wants. Now I have to serve those individuals in order to eat comfortably, which is a harsh reality that I had to understand because I love this field, right? I love architecture to the bone. Right. So as I was saying, I love this field, but like you just said, where your money goes as the client is where the industry will end up flowing. And this one book that I'm reading now, Fountainhead, right? It has this character, two main characters, right? And one of them is one who works in an office and reaches a point whereby he's in seniority. The other one, in the same span of time, they're living simultaneously, not different times, same time. They study together, right? He loves architecture to a point whereby he's not willing to settle his ideas for anyone. So now he's scraping, literally, to survive. You understand the dynamics which had me thinking, sitting back, like, do I now say I'm not going to do particular things because I appreciate architecture that's thought through? Like, if a client comes and says, I would like a space that actually informs me, compared to a client that says, I saw this thing that looks like this and this and this. You know, that one already is like, it's kind of, you know, like just feel free. Like just, you know, that way I feel free to design. I feel free to put a pen down on the paper and say, let's come up with something great for you. But now this issue of trends and people following these influencers and money just being there,